Hello and welcome to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and today I'm not joined by my co-host and colleague of normal, Brian Dick. I'm joined by Stoke City reporter for the Stoke Sentinel, Pete Smith. Hello Pete, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks, Alex. I'm relieved that I'm on this side of the fence at the moment. It was a long old season, wasn't it? And no one was quite sure who was going to end up in the bottom three. We got away with it.
Yeah, we've not got Pete here to talk about relegation. Nobody wants to remember last season. We're looking full steam ahead to the new one. Pete, if you're wondering why he's here to talk about Alex Neil, who has been linked with the Birmingham City job, who has had initial talks with the club over replacing or succeeding, I should say, Tony Mowbray, who obviously parted ways with the club earlier this week to prioritise his health after stepping down initially in February. Neil, vastly experienced manager. I was just saying to Pete before we came on air, I was stunned to find out yesterday when I was doing a little bit of research about him, he's still 42 years old because he's been in the Championship for so long. I think when he first came to the league in 2015 to take over at Norwich City, that season ended very well for him, but he'd have only been 33, I think, at the time, so a young manager in the Championship. He's also had spells at Preston North End, 4 years there, and he had a year, well, not even a year, literally 24 games at Sunderland it was, and got them promoted to the Championship via the playoffs, and then obviously jumped ship to you guys and went to Stoke. Pete, tell me a little bit about his first season at Stoke, please.
Well, I mean, it was a shock actually when it happened. He came in to replace Michael O'Neill, who'd been under a little bit of pressure at the end of the previous season. But then was given the pre-season, the summer, to rebuild the squad or take care of the transfer window. And then Stoke lost to Alex Neil Sunderland. The moans around the ground, and I think everybody was resigned to a long season. And then we went into the international break, and it was a bit of a shock one Thursday morning that O'Neill got the bullet. And I think when that call was made, it was pretty obvious that they'd only done it because they had someone lined up, and it was quickly apparent that that was Alex Neil, who'd almost got the job at Stoke a couple of years, 2.5 years earlier, when Michael O'Neill came in. And I spoke to him about that, actually. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I spoke to Alex Neil about why he didn't take the Stoke job when he was in charge of Preston. He was very close to taking it, and he knew what the scale of the task that Michael O'Neill inherited in terms of battling financial fair play. And by the time he did come to take over from Michael O'Neill, O'Neill had stripped it back, and Stoke were coming to the end of those challenges, ready to build again with really strong backing from the Coates family, who own the club. So Alex Neil was coming into a club that was just on the end of these really tough couple of years, stripping back, not being able to sign players for money, selling players. They sold the stadium and the training ground as well to Bet365. So they had to get to the end of that season before the summer, and a huge promise of a reset and a huge opportunity to go again. So it turned out to be a long few months. I think almost as soon as Alex Neil came in, players will have got the sense that he was here for this opportunity the following summer to rebuild the squad. And I'm not sure many were convinced that they had a long-term future under him. And I'm not sure he thought that the players who he inherited had a long-term future under him too. So that wasn't particularly a marriage made in heaven. Everyone knew that the club was coming to a crossroads. So there was a couple of months that stood out where he did really well. But other than that, it was a bit of a slog getting to this point. He kept them clear of relegation trouble and played some really good football in the March and the April. Had a really stonking win at Sunderland and at Coventry. But I think everyone was relieved when they got to the end of that season, and it was a chance to switch off the button, kick the side of the club and start again.
I remember last summer quite well because I'd just taken over from Brian as Birmingham City writer, and I was kind of chasing my tail of all these players. Blues only had I think 9 players. And I remember in a conversation with you one morning, you said Stoke had 7 contracted players. So your summer was even bigger than ours. Talk us through that summer recruitment and how involved Neil was, because from reading your stuff and what I understand, there was a few people kind of pulling strings in that summer at Stoke City.
Well, yeah, that's right. But he had his own stamp on the people who were also pulling strings as well. He brought in, or he recommended Ricky Martin to come in as technical director. This is a fellow who he'd worked closely with at Norwich, and he said when he came to Stoke, he recognised a vacancy for somebody who would be technically above him, who he could lean on to take care of different sides of the job, while he could concentrate more on the first team. But Ricky Martin ended up having a really powerful role and actually outlasted Alex Neil. Jared Dublin came in as head of recruitment, and that was an appointment that they made together. So although, the responsibility was shared, Alex Neil was also responsible for bringing in the guys who were sharing the responsibility with him. This was the reason why he came to Stoke. This is the reason why he left Sunderland, where he was a bit of a hero. He'd won promotion, pulled them out of League One, but he didn't have much of a chance to shape their transfer policy. I think it wouldn't be unfair of me to say that he probably saw Sunderland's job as being a position where a manager didn't have much authority, and he wanted to be the man in charge. So, and he got that at Stoke, and he got the promise and the backing to build a squad of his own making. So he was really looking forward to that as soon as he came in, and it was an unprecedented summer. I think there were 6 or 7 players on the first day of pre-season, and of them 3 or 4 left before the end of the summer transfer window. And he brought in, I think, 19 during the summer, 18, 19 players during the summer, and it was shaping up to be really busy again in the January if he'd have lasted that long.
Were any of the players that they signed last summer particularly impressive? I liked Berger, to be fair, when he played twice. Good player.
Yeah, Wouter Berger. There's 3, 2 of the players from last summer were contenders for Player of the Year. That's Wouter Berger, midfielder, and Bae Jun Ho. Both of them were probably head of recruitment suggestions brought in from left field. There were players who came in who'd played under Neil before, like Ben Pearce and Daniel Johnson, who he had at Preston, Keanu Hoover, who'd played for Stoke on loan from Wolves the previous season. And when he's done an interview recently talking about that summer and saying that although the shackles were let off a little bit at Stoke, I think there were something like 6 free agents and 5 loan players, so it wasn't like an open checkbook. But there are also a lot of players on Stoke's list who ended up at Birmingham. You're going to have to remind me the names. Who's the Japanese? Yeah, the Japanese playmaker.
And Koji Miyoshi as well.
Yeah. So they were kind of fishing in the same pool for a lot of the summer. But he was happy with the business that they did. But he also kept saying it's going to take time to gel. We're bringing in a whole new squad. And they were chasing their tail a little bit. I think when you have to bring in so many players, you know who you want, but at the same time, you need to get the numbers ticking over, and they ended up taking the plunge to sign a right winger rather than holding out for perhaps the player they really wanted at the end of August. So they ended up with 3 or 4 right wingers and only 1 left back. And when the left back got injured, you're kind of putting square pegs in round holes. So it was a really difficult summer, and one that he was really looking forward to. But I think he would probably accept came with challenges that were really difficult to overcome.
As a manager, you never want to be going to this. I mean, it sounds nice if you can completely overhaul a playing squad, but you never want to sign 16, 17 players, do you?
Oh, it's like Championship manager. There's never been a summer like it at Stoke, and probably not at many other clubs either. Just a chance to completely build the squad as you want it, but it never plays out as you probably dream it would do at this time of the summer.
I'm guessing that played a massive part in the second season and why it unravelled. I think Stoke were 20th midway through the season in about December time when he was relieved of his duties before Stephen Schimmer came in. What went wrong in that early part of the season?
I think his biggest problem with supporters is that the previous season had ended so sluggishly, and there hadn't been enough promise in that first season to buy in the time that he needed for everything to come together. And there were a couple of times when it seemed like everything had clicked. And there was a week in October when Stoke beat Sunderland and Leeds in Middlesbrough. I remember talking to him at the end of that week, and he was saying, "We've got to make sure this is no flash in the pan. This is just the start. I'm really confident in what we've done. You've seen it all coming together." And he didn't win a game after that. So that was tough. But I would say that throughout all the time he was at Stoke, he was absolutely, utterly convinced he would win promotion to the Premier League. It was a case of when rather than if. He kept saying, if ever I asked him a couple of difficult questions at press conferences afterwards, we'd be walking out, and he said, "Stop panicking, Pete. Everything's fine. We're gonna be all right. Don't worry." But yeah, until there was a game I think he ended up losing 3, maybe 4 in a row. Lost a tough game at QPR, which could have gone either way. There was a dodgy sending off. And then there was a game at Plymouth when Stoke took the lead against Stephen Schumacher's Plymouth, actually, and ended up losing 2-1, last kick of the game, 97th minute. And it was one of those closing moments of a match when he thought this could go both ways still. And I thought if Stoke had ended up getting the winner, there would have been a raucous away end, and everyone would have loved it and said Stoke had played well. But in the end, Plymouth got it, and Neil had to walk. You'll know the tunnel at Plymouth. You have to walk past the away end, and the away end was furious. This was against the team who'd just come up from League One, and Stoke had let themselves down, and Neil was getting a lot of stick. And he said he didn't quite know what to do. He didn't know whether to try to applaud the fans for making the long trip. He just thought if it did that, I'd look really patronising. Do I go and hold my hands up and apologise? And he said I'd just be winding up further if it did that. So he kept his head down and just tried to walk past everybody. And he just said that probably made the situation even worse. So in the days following that, you could just tell that all of a sudden, from being absolutely convinced up here, his confidence was up here, that he was the man for the job, to all of a sudden realising that his days were probably numbered, and unless he got wins very, very quickly, then that would be it. And as it turned out, they lost at home the following week to Sheffield Wednesday, last kick of the game, almost missed a penalty. And the press conference after that was almost apologising to fans and to the chairman for not being able to come up with the answers that we needed.
Stoke has been a little bit like Birmingham for the last 6-7 years, kind of underperforming in the Championship, and there are always managers, aren't there, who are convinced they can be the guy who's gonna get the team moving in the right direction. And we're both probably still waiting for them, but yeah, there's a big thing at Birmingham City about style of play. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the no fear football phenomenon. When Wayne Rooney took over back in October, the owners kind of put their weight behind this new style of football. They want the team to play possession-based, progressive, attacking football, because they thought it was the best route out of the Championship. And from what I understand, they're not going to abandon that now. They've been relegated to League One because they still see it as the best route to get out of League One. Then when they get back into the Championship, the best route to get out of the Championship. I was looking at Neil's first season at Stoke to kind of get a bit of an indication as to how he plays, and I remember his Norwich team was quite attacking. His Preston team was attacking, but could mix it up a little bit as well. They had obviously Jordan Hugill up front. At Stoke in the first season, averaged 52.8% possession per game, scored 55 goals, which was 12th in the league. 12.7 shots per game, which was the 8th best in the league. And so the metrics kind of suggest that they probably underperformed a little bit that season.
I probably underperformed their XG. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So in terms of style of play, does that suggest that they were tried to be a possession-based side that played attacking football on the front foot?
Yeah, that's how he would describe himself, definitely. And he always said that he would love to watch a game in black and white or teams wearing neutral colours and know exactly which was his team, playing with it really aggressively. Fast, direct football, and possession he thought was the best way to get out of the Championship. Teams who can keep the ball and make the most of it. He never had a striker who could score goals at Stoke consistently, which was a big problem. And it's not only been a problem for him, but a problem for the club. So yeah, that is definitely his style. I think he was convinced as well that at Stoke he had to play with more of a flourish than perhaps he could have got away with at Preston. I'm sure that he was convinced that at Preston they would celebrate a dogged 1-0 win more than he would get away with at Stoke. I don't think that was true. The Stoke fans are not used to winning football full stop at the moment. And if he'd been able to win games any which way, then he'd probably still be there. But yeah, that is definitely his mantra. And that would be the way he was going forward. He was very focused on tactics. And probably one of the criticisms that he had at Stoke and before him at Preston probably was being so obsessed with tactics that he would make changes to his team depending on the opposition more than relying on his own team to put their stamp on the game. I think he would probably say to that particularly in his first season at Stoke, he didn't have the players who he could trust to play exactly the way he wanted to. And in the second season, he wasn't able to gel them enough to see the full Alex Neil effect. When it was going, when we had a couple of good months, it was football to really get behind at its best when you're counter-attacking with pace and winning the ball back and knowing what to do with it. And I'm sure that'll be the way that he wants to play at his next club too.
You kind of already answered my last question, Pete, but was he popular with fans? And how would he be received? You know, if he was the Blues manager and was to get them back in the Championship and went back to the Bet365, how would he be received by Stoke fans?
Better than Gary Rowett. Probably better than Tony Mowbray as well. Mowbray had a long run in with Mowbray, and although Neil absolutely dedicated his life to Stoke for 16 months, he knows that he gets some stick when he walked back up the sideline. There aren't many managers who don't when they go back to former clubs. And I think even though he was really desperate to build a relationship with supporters, and he went and met supporters, had Q&As, visited pubs, and the bottom line was the results, and there was no hiding from it. And yeah, if he came back, I'm sure he would be gracious, but he would get it on the chin too. He would have to take it on the chin. Sorry.
Yeah, I long for the day where Wayne Rooney returns to St Andrews and walks down. That's going to be a spectacle.
Yeah, we'll hear it from here, I'm sure. One last thing, Alex, before you let me go, I would say that as you already hinted, the Stoke job is so different to pretty much any other job in the Championship, and I wouldn't rule out Alex Neil just based on how he did at Stoke. I mean, I asked you to rule out Gary Rowett as well. Nathan Jones would have never got another job. Michael O'Neill has come back to Northern Ireland. It's a club with owners who are desperate to give you the backing that they can, but they're really limited with financial fair play. And every other club is different, I would suggest, at the moment than Stoke in the bottom half of the Championship. And I'm sure Birmingham in League One would be an entirely different prospect to the 16 months that Alex Neil had at Stoke.
That's a lovely way to end. Thank you very much.
Very similar. If you could galvanise the squad to the job he took on at Sunderland, and in fact the job he took on at Norwich, if he thinks there's more in the squad he can get out of, rather than trying to rebuild one from scratch, then he might be the man.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this podcast. Obviously available on all your podcast platforms. Please subscribe on those platforms, and obviously hit like on YouTube and subscribe there as well. We'll be having more over the coming weeks and summer months to keep you entertained going into the new season. Thanks for listening, and a big keep right up.